Good afternoon and welcome to episode 28 of the Life and Spirit podcast. And really looking forward to covering this material, the material being chapter 16 of the book of Matthew. The last podcast we had, we were covering chapter 15, and that ended with what was referred to as the Gentile Sermon of the Mount. It also ended with Jesus feeding 4,000, mostly Gentiles, and so that was 4,000 men, so certainly additional women and children, so probably 10 to 15,000 people altogether. And that's the way we left it with chapter 15. And so we're going to be getting into chapter 16. But before we do, I wanted to certainly point out the fact that the heading of chapter 16 is the Pharisees and Sadducees demand signs. And so we'll get into verse 1 here, and it reads, "And the Pharisees and Sadducees came to test him. They asked him to show them a sign from heaven. He answered them, 'When it is evening, you say, it will be fair weather, for the sky is red. And in the morning, it will be stormy today, for the sky is red and threatening. You know how to interpret the appearance of the sky, but you cannot interpret the signs of the times. An evil and adulterous generation seeks for a sign, but no sign will be given for to it except the sign of Jonah.' So he left them and departed." And so we're going to stop there. And so here, the Pharisees and the Sadducees, they asked for a sign from heaven. And of course, Jesus recognized the fact that there is an insincerity in their asking for a sign, because certainly he had already fed the 4,000, fed the 5,000. He's already healed the sick, as well as brought sight to the blind and hearing to the deaf. He helped the lame to speak. All of these things were signs of his power, his divinity. And so the fact that they're asking for a sign from heaven, Jesus interprets that as there's an insincerity to their question. And in fact, he recognizes that they're not willing to receive him, and so they actually, despite all of the signs that have been shown in his ministry, they've chosen to not see those signs. They've chosen to not see that he is the Messiah. And so they're willfully blind. And so the fact that they're asking for a sign from heaven, it also brings to mind certainly Satan in tempting Jesus and asking for a sign from heaven. He recognizes the similarity between what the Sadducees and the Pharisees are asking and what Satan asked in the temptation of Jesus. And he also refers to them as an adulterous generation. And what Jesus is referring to, he's not talking about sexual adultery, but he's referring to the fact that that they're looking for these additional signs, that they're not they're not actually acting in accordance with with God and with God's law, and that they're always looking for these additional signs. And he tells them that he is going to only show them the sign of Jonah. And so that could have been interpreted by the Pharisees and the Sadducees as being Jesus wanting them to repent. And so that would have been one interpretation of that. The other interpretation of that would have been that Jesus would die at the hands of the religious leaders, and that he would die and he would be buried for 3 days, and like Jonah, who was in the belly of the whale for 3 days, and so they could have recognized what Jesus was telling him or telling them about his upcoming death. And certainly, make no mistake, they certainly are plotting against Jesus, and they are looking for ways to destroy Jesus, and they are not recognizing his divinity, and so he leaves them abruptly. And it is just another example where Jesus, seeing that they have a spiritual blindness, that they're refusing to see, that they're unwilling to see, that and seeing that they actually are plotting his destruction, he leaves them abruptly. And then there's the fact that Jesus also recognized that they really were not being sincere in their asking for a sign or more evidence as to who he is. And it is interesting that the Pharisees, who are truly the religious leaders and experts on the law, who believe in the resurrection, who believe in the certainly believe in the spiritual world, in contrast with the Sadducees, who they're very worldly. Their position, it doesn't come from just careful study of the law and the oral law, like with the Pharisees, but theirs is really more of a they're the religious elite. Their families were families that had wealth and power, and maybe large landowners. So they've got the connections, they've got the lineage to where the Romans recognized them as being in a position of stature, and they work very closely with the Romans as far as they're communicating with the imperial power. Certainly a lot more than the Pharisees would, because their main concern, their focus is on their position of power within the temple in Jerusalem. They're being recognized by the imperial powers as having power, and so they certainly see Jesus as maybe disrupting things. They see him as being a disruptor that could interfere with a life that they're living, that they don't really want. They don't want that life to be interfered with. They're pretty content in the role that they're playing there in Jerusalem. The Sadducees are, and so they're very different than the Pharisees. So it's interesting that they have aligned, that they have kind of teamed up, if you will, in their questioning of Jesus, and they came from Jerusalem, and they're now questioning Jesus and asking for a sign from heaven. And but one thing they do have in common is a willful blindness to not see that what Jesus is saying about himself is true, and that he is the Messiah. And so they do have that in common. And so that takes us to the next section of chapter 16, which is now that Jesus is left abruptly. It's the leaven of the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and it reads, "When the disciples reached the other side, they had forgotten to bring any bread. Jesus said to them, 'Watch and beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees.' And they began discussing among themselves, saying, 'We brought no bread.' But Jesus, aware of this, said, 'Oh, you of little faith, why are you discussing among yourselves the fact that you have no bread? Do you not yet perceive? Do you not remember the 5 loaves for the 5,000 and how many baskets you gathered? Or the 7 loaves for the 4,000, which of course was in the last chapter, 4,000, and how many baskets you gathered? How is it that you fail to understand that I did not speak about bread? Beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees.' Then they understood that he did not tell them to beware of the leaven of bread, but of the teaching of the Pharisees and the Sadducees." And so that's really interesting that the Pharisees, the disciples, they kind of got it at that point. At the end of this section, they're kind of getting it, and they're realizing that Jesus is not talking about bread and the fact that they didn't bring bread, but he's actually talking about the teaching of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. And so that is, it's good that they did understand that at the end of this section. But you could tell that Jesus was showing a lot of patience, but he was certainly he was aware of the fact that while the Sadducees and the Pharisees were willfully blind, the disciples, at least in the beginning of this section, they were failing to understand what he viewed as a simple metaphor about the yeast of the Pharisees and Sadducees. And so he showed a lot of patience with the disciples, and with the certainly with the Sadducees and the Pharisees. They, of course, they rejected Jesus because of their excess. The Pharisees, their excess legalism. In the case of the Sadducees, their skepticism, their rationalizing, their rationalization. The fact that they're thinking more in worldly kind of terms, but the fact is that Jesus did actually bring up the fact that he had fed the 4,000 or the 5,000, and then after that the 4,000. He brought that up. He reminded the disciples of that. The Pharisees and the Sadducees would have also been aware of those miracles, but they're willfully blind, even though they may have been aware of those miracles of feeding the 4,000 and the 5,000, not to mention women and children. They are remaining willfully blind, where the disciples, pardon me, they were spiritually. At this point, they were spiritually dull, but they were not blind. And then at the end, we see that that dullness kind of they saw through that, and they saw at the end, they understood that Jesus, the light bulb went off, and that Jesus wasn't talking about physical bread. He was talking about the teaching of the Pharisees and the teaching of the Sadducees. Also worth mentioning, I was thinking about the fact that with the feeding of the 5,000, the feeding of the 4,000 with just a very little supplies that the disciples had, that he was able to do that through multiplication. And so he took that very little bit of bread and fish, and he was able to multiply it, and he was able to multiply that to the point where it was able to feed those very large, hungry crowds of people. And so that was through multiplication. Even if there were large crowds to feed and there was no bread, certainly I'm convinced that certainly Jesus didn't need those meager supplies to perform that miracle. He chose to do that because he chose to involve the disciples in those miracles, and it was the disciples that actually handed that food it was the disciples that handed the food to the many people that ate, and so they were involved in that. They were involved in gathering what was left at the end, the baskets of the food, and so he chose to involve the disciples, and that was something that Jesus chose to do. And so then the next section here is entitled, Peter Confesses Jesus as the Christ. And verse 13 reads, Now, when Jesus came into the district of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, Who do people say that the Son of Man is? And they said, Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and others Jeremiah, or one of the prophets. And then he said to them, But who do you say that I am? Simon Peter replied, You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus answered him, Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. Then he strictly charged the disciples to tell no one that he was the Christ. And so this is really a real remarkable kind of a turning point that you might say. Well, a turning point that Peter, of course, recognized that Jesus, who Jesus was, and so a real turning point from that standpoint. It is worth mentioning that they actually that they traveled to Caesarea Philippi, and that was a pagan area that was very had an imperial kind of an influence to it, part of the Roman kingdom, and so there would have been other gods there that was the backdrop to the question that Jesus asked about who do the disciples say that he is. And like Peter often did, he would often act as the spokesperson for the disciples, and as that spokesperson, he spoke up and he said, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." And so that was a real breakthrough moment for Peter to recognize who Jesus was and to be able to articulate that. Certainly Jesus was pleased, and he blessed Peter, and then Jesus spoke of the fact that he was going to be building his church on that rock, and on this rock, and the rock in Matthew is Peter. In other Gospels, you see that he may have been referring to all of the disciples and not just Peter, but he did refer to the fact that he is giving Peter the keys to the kingdom, and that what he binds would be bound, and that he would have a great deal of binding and loosing authority. And he also referred in this section to the fact that it wasn't man that revealed these things to Peter, but it was Father God who revealed these things to Peter. And so certainly biblical scholars differ in the interpretation, specific interpretation of what Jesus said here, but certainly there is no question that he certainly was blessing Peter for revealing who he was, and articulating it the way he did, and certainly letting him know who I think in their case they knew that they felt he was, but Peter was the first to articulate that, and Jesus blessed him and honored him as the verses indicate. He showed him great honor and said that he was going to build his church on that rock. And then that leads us to this last section. In this last section, it actually refers to the fact that Jesus foretells his death and his resurrection. And I shouldn't say the next section. Jesus foretells his death and resurrection. And so right after Peter had told him that who he was, and articulated that so beautifully by saying that he was the Christ, he was the Son of the living God. Now we go into this section, which is entitled Jesus Foretells His Death and Resurrection, and it reads, "From that time Jesus began to show his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things from the elders and chief priests and scribes, to be killed, on the third day be raised. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him, saying, Far be it from you, Lord, this shall never happen to you. But he turned and said to Peter, Get behind me, Satan. You are a hindrance to me, for you are not setting your mind on the things of God, but on the things of man." And so that is a real, certainly a real turning point here, because here, after Peter recognized him as the Christ, as the Son of the living God, now Jesus is using the opportunity to tell the disciples what he is going to be going through, and he is telling them. In fact, it is referred to as the first passion. So he's telling them with a good deal of detail. Later, with the second and third passion in the Gospels, he's going to be even telling them with even more detail what is going to be happening to him. But it's a real turning point where Jesus is talking about his suffering, his dying, his rising. And so again, this is the first of the three passions, but it is certainly a turning point to where Jesus, now that Peter has identified him correctly, he is now telling them what's going to be happening to him, and he's saying it. He's telling them in pretty good detail here in this first passion what is going to be the first of three passions. What is going to be happening to him. And so Jesus certainly, when Peter, and again, it's it is the timing is so interesting because Peter was just praised, so highly by Jesus for recognizing Jesus' identity as the Christ, as the Son of the living God, and here Jesus rebukes Peter and says, "Get behind me, Satan." And what that actually, Peter is not actually, or Jesus is not actually calling Peter Satan in the sense that he thinks that Peter has suddenly, become Satan. But what he's referring to is that Peter is tempting him in a way that is very similar to the way that Satan tempted him in the wilderness, and he is actually tempting him with the ability to reign without the cross, and Jesus, of course, knows that he must actually face the cross, and so the similarity between what Peter is saying and what Satan tempted him with, the similarity is that they're both, the coincidence is that they're both actually kind of voicing that he could avoid the cross, and so that is I think what led Jesus to say, "Get behind me, Satan." And then he also patiently, kind of tells Peter that Peter is he's got his mind on human concerns and not on God's plan, and so that is something that we can take away from this, in the sense that Peter, of course, who loved Jesus, who Peter would have thought, as many did, that Jesus was going to be this conquering Messiah that was going to that would reign. But didn't see him as the suffering Messiah who would be crucified, and so you can kind of tell, you can kind of see what was maybe going through Peter's mind when he said that. But it was he was looking at it from a human perspective, and he was failing to see that what Jesus was referring to was that he was there to do the will of God, and it was the will of Father God that he die on that cross as a living sacrifice for many whose sins are going to be forgiven because of what he did on the cross. And so Jesus, of course, he's got his mind on what God's plan and not on human things, and he patiently kind of let Peter know that he said what he said because he's got his mind on human things and not on the things of God. And so that leads us to the next section of this of chapter 16, which is take up your cross and follow me. And that reads, "Then Jesus told his disciples, 'If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up the cross and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his soul? Or what shall a man give in return for his soul? For the Son of Man is going to come with his angels in the glory of his Father, and then he will repay each person according to what he has done. Truly I say to you, there are some standing here who will not taste death until they see the Son of God coming to his kingdom." And so here, Jesus is certainly alluding, and the disciples, certainly 11 of the disciples anyway, may not have realized that Jesus actually was referring to that there was an aspect of what he was saying that was referring to how they, were going to die, and so there's that aspect, and that they needed to actually to be in a state of mind and heart where they were willing to follow Jesus, who was willing to go to the cross to save mankind. And so certainly there was that aspect of what he said that was referring to how the disciples would ultimately how they would die, and they would that they would indeed they would actually follow him in this manner in their own deaths. But he of course is committed to the journey of the cross. It's very interesting that this particular chapter of Matthew actually is it's prior to chapter 17, which it's the transfiguration, and so it's just interesting that it's just preceding the transfiguration, and that kind of goes to the fact that he ended by saying that some standing here will not taste death until they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. And so the way there's some spiritual tension in what was said in verse 28, and because they're not referring to he's not referring to the second coming, but he is referring to many feel he's referring to the transfiguration, and that's one explanation of how this particular section ends, is that he is referring to the transfiguration. Other people would have also seen in this particular last verse of chapter 16 that that it is fulfilled in part by the Pentecost, as well as others may say, well, no, that it's fulfilled, through the the resurrection and ascension of Jesus, and so there is that spiritual tension to what he says in verse 28. And then, of course, Jesus, of course, makes the case that the human soul is truly priceless. That the soul, which is certainly the key to eternity, that there's no human treasure, there's no value that somebody might be able to acquire such wealth that they'd be able to buy back their soul. To put it succinctly, the any kind of wealth or treasure is finite, and the soul is eternal, and something eternal cannot be purchased by anything finite, any amount of land, any amount of wealth, any amount of treasure. And so Jesus is actually making the case that by following him and by not safeguarding their life, not valuing their life over their soul, that they're going to be focused on eternal things and not on safeguarding their life. Or put another way, that somebody could spend their earthly treasure safeguarding their life but lose their soul. And so that is just very profound as we end chapter 16, as there's no value that can be put on the soul. That case is certainly made in at the end here, this last section of chapter 16. As far as verse 28, again, he was perhaps he was referring to, some think the transfiguration, as Jesus is the light of the world, and he's going to demonstrate that to a few of the disciples in the next section. There also is the fact that at the Pentecost, which takes place after his death, his resurrection, and his ascension, that the Pentecost and receiving the Holy Spirit could be the fulfillment of verse 28. And then, of course, there's also just many others feel that is fulfilled by the resurrection and the ascension of Jesus. Certainly, the kingdom of heaven, in part, is already in action in throughout the book of Matthew. And of course, through the ministry of Jesus, or the Son of the living God, as Peter so aptly put earlier in the chapter. And so I want to thank you very much for listening to this podcast, for certainly taking in this information, for meditating on what has been discussed. I would love it if you felt compelled to share any questions or comments. Certainly, if you wanted to subscribe and become part of the on a subscription basis, part of the Life and Spirit community by subscribing, that would be great. But again, thank you for joining me for this study of chapter 16 of the book of Matthew. We'll be together again very soon for chapter 17. In the meantime, I want to say God bless you, God bless your families, and I wish you the very, very, very best until we meet again. Thank you again, and good day.